Next up, let's talk about Q&A visuals. These allow users to explore and visualize data from your model using intuitive, natural language prompts and queries. So for example, you might type a prompt like show me total revenue by country. Power BI is going to take its best stab at interpreting what you mean and produce the most relevant value or visual, like the map that we see here. Now, the important thing to know about Q&A visuals is that they're only as useful and only as accurate as the data model behind them, and they typically require a significant amount of training before they're truly effective. So what exactly do I mean by training? Well, inside of Power BI Desktop, we have a few different options to refine our model and teach Power BI how to handle different types of queries. First, we have field synonyms. This is where you can add human-readable synonyms for the tables, columns, or measures in your model. Next, you can actually review questions or real prompts from users to help refine your model. Note that this requires that you publish your report to Power BI Service. You can also teach the Q&A by adding example questions to try to find missing or misunderstood terms so that you can add new synonyms. And last but not least, this one's less about training and more about the user experience. You can pre-populate a list of suggested questions that users can choose from by default. So with that, let's jump into Power BI, practice building a Q&A visual ourselves. All right, so for our Q&A demo, we're going to insert a brand new report page, and let's call this Q&A. And on this page, we're going to insert a new Q&A visual from our AI group right here. And let's go ahead and resize things. And what I'm also going to do is add a matrix to this page as well, so that I can kind of spot check the values from the Q&A visual. So let's start with category name on rows and total orders on values. So when it comes to interacting with the Q&A, it's as simple as just typing what you're looking for. So for example, total orders for bikes. It spits out a card with 14,000. And if we check that against our matrix, 13,929 looks good. So what if we get a little bit more specific here? Total orders for blue bikes. Now we get 1,263. We go to our matrix and we pull in color on rows. We can drill into bikes, and blue bikes 1,263, looking good. So we're 2 for 2, off to a good start. Now let's get a little bit more detailed. Total orders for blue bikes by start of month. Now you'll see a couple interesting things happen. First of all, Power BI produced this monthly line chart, which looks good. This is accurate. And you'll also notice that we see this red underline. So the blue underline means that Power BI identified what these terms actually mean. The red underline means it's not entirely sure, but it made a guess. So in this case, start of month can actually be found in a few different places. Calendar lookup table, the rolling calendar, or inside of our date hierarchy. So you'll notice beneath the prompt, it says showing results for total orders for blue bikes by calendar lookup start of month. So that's the guess or the assumption that Power BI made to produce this visual. And in this case, that's accurate. But if I were to type something that's just complete gibberish, like this, I get a double red underline, which basically just says, we give up, right? We don't know what you mean, try a different term, or add this one by creating a definition. And that's one of the ways that you can train your model, which we're going to talk about in just a bit. So let's get rid of that gibberish and expand this query one more time. So total orders for blue bikes by start of month, but now we don't want a line chart, I want a column chart. I could say as column chart. And there we go, visual updates. And what's even better is that just like any other visual, we've got cross-filtering effects as we select certain values in the chart. So notice our matrix updating with each of these month selections. Now, some of you out there are probably thinking, well, Chris, you're typing very specific terms because you are so familiar with the data model, but an average user probably wouldn't be using terms like total orders or start of month. They'd probably type something that's a little less clear or a little more general, like orders by month, right? That's a much more realistic query from a user who's not as familiar with the underlying data structure and data model. And this is where things get interesting. And here's a good example, right? With this query, orders by month, initially it looks accurate. We see a line chart, but the problem is that there's only 12 data points here, and we've got 2.5 years of data in our model. And if you look closely, you'll realize that Power BI is aggregating the order volumes for each distinct month number. And by doing so, it's creating this kind of meaningless trend that's quite a bit misleading, to be honest. So I'm going to show you how to solve this in just a second. But another example of where a general query can cause problems is something like revenue by category. So what we see here, we're hoping to see kind of product categories, right? Accessories, bikes, and clothing. Instead, we see this bar chart broken down all the way down to the SKU category level, which in this case is not what I was intending. So that's a good segue into the training options that are available to make these Q&A visuals more accurate. And we can access those training options through this gear icon here. That's going to open up a brand new window where we can access all of these different training options. So let's start with synonyms. This is where you'll be spending the most time training your models. And the first thing to note here is that you can actually hide entire tables or individual fields from the Q&A. And this is great if you have things like parameter tables or fields that you never want to be shown in a Q&A visual. You'll also notice that Power BI often takes a stab at creating synonyms for individual terms. Month short, synonym is short, and some of these really don't make much sense at all. In this case, start of month has a synonym of start, same with start of quarter, week, and year. So while we're in here, because these fields are the ones we typically use for time series analysis, really want to clean up these synonyms. So start of month, let's update and add a synonym called month. Start of quarter, let's get rid of start and add quarter. I'm going to do the same thing for start of week and for start of year. So that's going to help clean things up quite a bit. I can also go up to that month field, which was causing us to kind of aggregate those order numbers by month number. And I can say, you know what, we only want to match with that start of month column. Let's just hide the month field from the Q&A visual entirely. And we'll jump back and see what impact that had in just a second. Last thing I want to do here while I'm managing my synonyms is try to understand why that category query was mapping to SKU categories. So that SKU category field lives in product lookup. You can scroll down to SKU category, and you can see that Power BI had automatically created a synonym called category, and that's why we were mapping to this field in our query. So let's delete or remove that synonym there. Let's collapse this table and head to our category table and make sure that category name, which is the field we wanted, does have a proper synonym for a category. So I'll add it here. And then I actually know there's one other place where that word category shows up, and that's in our customer table in the education category. You can see we've got a category synonym for this field as well. So we're creating all sorts of confusion with this Q&A visual. Let's remove it here. This is really a good real-world example about how messy this process can be and how much effort it typically takes to properly train a model and get consistent, accurate results. So I could go through all of the tables and fields here in my model, but I think for now that should do the trick. One thing to call out here is that you've got this Manage Terms tab, and that's where you can see all of these synonyms that you just created. So with that, let's jump back to our visual and check this out. Now our revenue by category prompt returns what we'd expect: product category breakouts, bikes, accessories, and clothing. And if we go back to that other prompt we tried, orders by month, which gave us the aggregated totals, now we're mapping to that start of month field, and we're showing the proper time series trend. So those updates we made by adding those synonyms had a really significant impact on how this Q&A visual functions. Now, another feature I want to show you in here is the review questions option. And again, this is only relevant if we've published the report to service, but this is where we can see actual questions that users asked. We can also see if they gave the results a thumbs up or thumbs down rating, and we can see through these underlines how well Power BI was able to interpret the prompt. So in this case, we see that a user typed orders by product type, We don't have any field in the dataset called type, but they're most likely looking for subcategory level data. That might be a good hint for us to go into our field synonyms and add some new synonyms to make sure this type of question is generating the proper result. Next up, we've got this Teach Q&A option here. This is where you can kind of test different queries and help Power BI define terms that it doesn't recognize. So here's one example, orders for bicycles, and we submit that prompt. Power BI is going to say, hey, we have no idea what you mean by bicycles. Can you help define it here? So in this case, we can say bicycle refers to, category is bikes. You can go ahead and save that once it loads. Based on my preview, that actually looks correct. And now in manage terms, you'll see that update right here. Bicycle is defined as category name is bicycle if category name is bikes. Now, last thing to show you here is the suggest questions option. And this can be helpful if you want to kind of train users how to ask effective questions, or if there are specific questions that you want people to ask about the data. So for example, orders by month, we can add that. Could do anything here like return rate by category. These are just examples, but let's go ahead and save those two. And now when we close this box and head back to our visual, and if we clear this prompt, you see those two suggested questions that we just added, return rate by category, orders by month. Now, last but not least, if you kind of have a visual that's been produced that you really like, and you're done interacting with Q&A, you can click this button here next to the gear, and what that's going to do is convert it into a standard visual. So we're no longer a Q&A visual, we're now a standard line chart. So there you have it. I know that was a lot to cover, but that's your crash course in Power BI's Q&A visual.